Too big, just sit. She sat down and discovered the most dangerous truth. She had always believed that people in charge knew what they were doing. That belief had helped her survive many uncomfortable moments in life. When she was unsure, she stayed quiet. When she felt small, she told herself it was normal. And when someone spoke with confidence, she listened. That morning, she stood just inside the doorway of the large office, holding her bag close to her chest. The room smelled of polished wood and strong coffee. Sunlight came through tall windows, making the floor shine. Everything looked important, heavy, and expensive. It was the kind of place where voices were low and decisions were final. She shifted her weight and looked at the chair in front of the desk. It was wide, dark, and solid with thick arms and a stiff back. Something about it made her uneasy. It felt like it did not belong to her, like it was meant for someone else. Someone bigger, someone stronger. "I don't think this will work," she said softly, her voice almost lost in the room. "It seems too big." The man behind the desk did not look up right away. He was flipping through papers, his face calm and bored, as if nothing she said could possibly matter. When he finally glanced at her, he gave a small smile that did not reach his eyes. "Too big," he repeated, amused. "Just sit." There was laughter from somewhere behind her, not loud but enough to make her cheeks burn. She felt silly for speaking at all. She wondered if she had imagined the discomfort, if she was overthinking again like she always did. She hesitated, her hand touching the back of the chair. The leather felt cold. Her instincts whispered that she should step back, ask another question, or even leave. But the room was watching her now. Silence pressed in from all sides, so she sat. The chair did not break. Nothing dramatic happened. Yet the moment she settled into it, she felt trapped. The arms were too high, the back too stiff. It forced her into a straight position that made her shoulders tense. She could not move easily. It was uncomfortable in a quiet, steady way, like a slow warning. The man nodded, satisfied. "See? Fine." She nodded too, though her stomach tightened. She placed her bag on the floor by her feet and folded her hands in her lap, just as she had been taught to do in situations like this. Be polite, be still, do not cause trouble. As the meeting began, words flowed around her. Big words, serious words. Plans, numbers, responsibilities. She listened carefully, trying to follow, but it was hard. The language was confusing and the pace was fast. When she opened her mouth to ask for clarity, someone else would speak over her. She told herself it was just nerves. First days were always like this. New places made her feel out of place. She reminded herself how long she had worked to reach this opportunity, how many nights she had stayed awake, hoping for something better. She did not want to ruin it by seeming weak. Still, small things kept bothering her. The man avoided certain topics, skipping over details that felt important. When she asked about procedures, the answer was vague. "You'll learn as you go," he said. "No need to worry about that yet." Others in the room exchanged looks she could not read, quick glances, raised eyebrows. Then they would look away as if nothing had happened. She sat there, trying not to fidget, trying not to notice how her back ached or how the chair seemed to hold her in place. Every minute felt longer than the last. The air felt heavy, as if the room itself was listening. At one point, she dropped her pen. It rolled across the floor and stopped near the leg of the desk. When she leaned forward to pick it up, she realized how difficult it was to move in the chair. The arms pressed into her sides. For a brief second, panic flickered in her chest. She froze, then forced herself to breathe and reached down slowly. No one helped. No one spoke. The meeting continued as if she were invisible. When she finally straightened up again, her heart was racing. She told herself she was being silly. It was just a chair, just nerves. But deep inside, something shifted. She remembered other times in her life when she had ignored that same feeling. Times when she had stayed quiet to keep the peace. Times when she had been told to just relax or stop worrying. Each time, she had later wished she had listened to herself. The meeting ended with handshakes and polite smiles. The man stood, tall and confident, and thanked everyone for coming. When he reached her, his grip was firm, almost too firm. "Good to have you on board," he said. She smiled back because that was what was expected. "Thank you." As she stood up, her legs felt stiff. She glanced at the chair one last time. It stood there, silent and solid, as if it had done exactly what it was meant to do. Outside the office, the hallway felt brighter, safer. She took a deep breath and tried to shake off the heaviness in her chest. People passed by, talking and laughing. Life went on as usual, yet the words echoed in her mind. Too big, just sit. That night at home, she replayed the day over and over. She tried to focus on the positives, the opportunity, the promise of stability, the relief of finally being chosen. Still, her thoughts kept returning to the moment she had spoken up and been dismissed. Why had it bothered her so much? She sat at her small kitchen table, staring at a cup of tea that had long gone cold. She thought about how easy it had been for them to laugh, to brush her off, how quickly she had given in. She opened her notebook and wrote down what she remembered from the meeting. Not because she was told to, but because she needed to make sense of it. As she wrote, she noticed gaps, missing explanations, unclear responsibilities. She paused, pen hovering over the page. For the first time, she allowed herself to think the thought she had been pushing away all day. What if this was not just uncomfortable? What if it was dangerous? The idea scared her, and she almost closed the notebook right then. It would be easier not to think about it. Easier to trust that everything would work out, but the feeling in her chest would not go away. She remembered how the chair had held her still, how the room had watched her, how her voice had sounded small, even to herself. She looked around her modest apartment at the worn couch and the chipped paint on the walls. This job meant more than money. It meant safety. It meant respect. Walking away was not a simple choice. Still, she knew one thing for certain. That moment, when she was told to sit instead of being heard, was not as harmless as it seemed. It was the beginning of something she did not yet understand. And though she did not know it then, the truth waiting ahead was far more dangerous than an uncomfortable chair. The next morning she arrived earlier than usual. The building was quiet, almost too quiet, with only the soft hum of lights and the distant sound of cleaning carts. She liked coming early. Fewer eyes, fewer questions. It gave her time to breathe and think. She placed her bag under her desk and sat down slowly, adjusting her chair this time. It was smaller than the one in the office from the day before, but the memory of that seat followed her like a shadow. She shook her head, trying to push the thought away. "Focus," she whispered to herself. Her screen lit up with messages and reminders, tasks she did not fully understand, instructions written in short lines that assumed she already knew what to do. She read each one carefully, then read them again. The words were clear, yet the meaning felt hidden, like something important was missing. As the day moved forward, the strange feeling returned. People spoke in low voices near her desk, stopping the moment she looked up. When she smiled at them, they smiled back, but their eyes slid away too quickly. It made her feel as if she were standing in the wrong place, hearing things she was not meant to hear. At lunch, she sat alone in the small break room, stirring her food without much appetite. Two coworkers entered, talking quietly. They froze when they noticed her, then changed the subject at once. "Busy morning," one of them said too brightly. "Yes," she replied. "Very." They nodded, ate quickly, and left. The door closed with a soft click and the silence pressed in again. She told herself not to imagine things. New places always felt awkward. People took time to warm up. That was normal. Still, the unease stayed. That afternoon, she was asked to deliver a folder to a different floor. The elevator ride felt long, each second stretching. When the doors opened, she stepped into a hallway she had not seen before. It was dimmer, quieter, with fewer signs. The carpet was older, the walls marked by time. She found the office number and knocked. No answer. She knocked again, softer this time, then tried the handle. The door opened slightly. She hesitated, then pushed it open just enough to look inside. The room was empty. On the desk sat several open folders, papers spread out, covered in numbers and notes. She knew she should not look. She knew it was not her place. But something pulled her forward, a mix of curiosity and concern she could not ignore. She stepped inside. She did not read everything, just enough to feel her heart begin to race. The numbers did not match what she had heard in meetings. Dates were crossed out and replaced. Names appeared and disappeared across different pages, written in different handwriting. This was not a mistake. It felt planned. Her breath grew shallow. She closed the folder carefully just as footsteps sounded in the hallway. Panic flashed through her, sharp and sudden. She moved back toward the door, pretending she had just arrived. A woman walked in, stopping short when she saw her. "Oh," the woman said, "you're early." "I was told to drop this off," she replied, holding up the folder she had brought, her hand trembling slightly. The woman watched her closely, her face unreadable. Then she smiled. "You can leave it there." She nodded, set the folder down, and left without another word. The elevator ride back down felt longer than before. Her thoughts spun, one chasing the next. She told herself she had not seen enough to be sure of anything. Numbers could be confusing. Papers could be outdated, but deep down she knew. Over the next few days, the pattern continued. She was left out of certain meetings. Her access to some files was delayed without explanation. When she asked questions, the answers were short and careful, as if each word had been chosen in advance. "Don't worry about that part," she was told more than once. "That's above your level. Stay where you are, do not look too closely." At home, sleep became difficult. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations in her mind. Small moments that had seemed unimportant now felt heavy with meaning. A pause before an answer. A look exchanged across the room. A door closed just a bit too fast. She started writing things down again. Times, names, odd instructions. Not because she planned to do anything with the information, but because she needed to keep it straight. Writing helped her feel less lost. One evening, as she was packing up to leave, a man from another department stopped by her desk. "Getting the hang of things?" he asked. "I think so," she said. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Be careful." Her heart skipped. "Careful of what?" He straightened, glancing around. "Never mind, just be careful." Before she could ask more, he walked away. She stood there for a long moment, staring after him. The office felt colder somehow, the lights harsher. She sat back down slowly, the words echoing in her mind. "Be careful." That night, rain tapped against her window as she sat at her table, notebook open. She read through her notes, seeing the connections more clearly now. What she had thought were small inconsistencies began to form a shape she did not like. She thought about the chair again, how she had been told to sit instead of speak, how easily her concern had been dismissed. It felt less like a single moment and more like a rule she was expected to follow. Do not question, do not stand out, do not move. The realization made her chest tighten. At work the next day, she noticed how often people avoided being alone with her. Conversations ended when she approached. Emails went unanswered longer than they should have. It was subtle, but it was there. She began to wonder if they knew she had seen something. If that moment in the empty office had not been as private as she thought. The thought frightened her. During a late afternoon meeting, she listened carefully as plans were discussed. She recognized some of the figures now. They sounded clean and simple when spoken aloud, but she knew better. She had seen what was beneath them. Her hands clenched under the table. When the meeting ended, the man from the first day caught her eye. He studied her face for a moment, as if searching for something. "You're quiet today," he said. "Just listening," she replied. "Good," he said. "That's smart." The word stayed with her long after he walked away. Smart. She wondered what smart really meant in this place. Did it mean careful, silent, obedient? By the end of the week, the unease had grown into something heavier. It sat with her when she worked, when she ate, when she tried to rest. She felt as though she were standing on unstable ground, unsure which step might cause everything to collapse. She thought about leaving. The idea came to her suddenly, clear and tempting. She could quit, walk away before things became worse, protect herself. But then she thought about what she had seen, what she now suspected. Walking away would not make it disappear. It would only leave the truth buried, free to cause harm. She closed her notebook slowly. She did not yet know what she would do. She only knew that she could no longer pretend everything was fine. The seat she had been told to take had placed her closer to the center than she ever intended. And the more she tried to stay still, the clearer it became. Something was very wrong, and she was already part of it. By the start of the second week, she stopped telling herself that she was imagining things. The feeling had changed. It was no longer a soft warning in the background. It was sharp and present, like a constant pressure she could not escape. She noticed it the moment she entered the building each morning. Her shoulders tightened as soon as she passed the doors. Even the sound of her footsteps on the floor seemed too loud, as if the place were listening. She focused on her work and kept her head down. That was the safest way, she believed. Do what is asked, say little, observe more. One afternoon, an email arrived that did not look like the others. It had no greeting, no explanation, just a short message and a file attached. Please review. Her fingers hovered over the mouse. She stared at the screen for a long moment before opening the file. When it appeared, her heart began to beat faster. It was a report, detailed, cleanly written. The numbers were familiar, too familiar. They matched the ones she had seen in the open folders days earlier, but here they were presented in a different way. Some lines were missing. Others were adjusted just enough to change the meaning. She leaned closer to the screen, reading carefully. This was not careless work. Someone had taken time to reshape the truth, not enough to be obvious, just enough to pass without questions. Her mouth felt dry. She checked the sender's name. It belonged to someone high up, someone respected, someone she had been told to trust. She closed the file and sat back, her mind racing. This was no longer just strange behavior or poor communication. This was something deliberate. She looked around the office. People typed at their desks. Phones rang. Laughter drifted from somewhere down the hall. Everything looked normal. That was what made it worse. Normal can hide a lot. She saved a copy of the file to her notes, labeling it carefully, then reopened it and read it again. Each line made her more certain. The truth she had been circling was finally taking shape. This place was hiding something serious. The realization made her feel cold. She wrapped her arms around herself, even though the room was warm. She thought about her life before this job. It had been simpler, harder in some ways, but clearer. Right and wrong had felt easy to tell apart. Now everything felt blurred. Later that day, she was asked to assist with a task she had not been trained for. It involved records she had not been allowed to see before. When she questioned it, the response was quick. Just follow the steps, her supervisor said. No need to think too much. The words sent a chill through her. She followed the instructions carefully, pretending not to notice what they were asking her to do. But she noticed. Every step confirmed what she already suspected. The system was designed to shift responsibility, to make sure no one person could be blamed, except maybe someone at the bottom. Her hands shook slightly as she worked. She kept her face calm, her movements steady. Inside, fear grew with every click of the keyboard. That evening, as she was leaving, she saw the man who had warned her earlier standing near the exit. He looked tired, older than she remembered. She slowed her steps, unsure whether to speak. He noticed her and gave a small nod. "Long day," he said. "Yes," she replied. "Every day feels long here." He studied her for a moment. "You're paying attention," she swallowed. "Is that bad?" He did not answer right away. Instead, he glanced around, then lowered his voice. "Once you see it, you can't unsee it." Her heart pounded. "See what?" he sighed. "I can't say more, just protect yourself." Before she could respond, he walked out the door, leaving her standing there with more questions than before. That night she did not sleep at all. She sat at her table, notebook open, documents spread around her like pieces of a puzzle. She compared numbers, dates, names. Slowly, painfully, the picture became clear. The work she was involved in was being used to cover mistakes that were not mistakes at all. They were choices. Choices that benefited a few people at the cost of many others who would never even know what had happened. Her chest ached as she realized the scale of it. This was bigger than one office, bigger than one team. It reached farther than she had imagined. And she was now connected to it. She pressed her hands flat on the table and closed her eyes. Fear washed over her in waves. Fear of being caught. Fear of being blamed. Fear of what would happen if she spoke, and fear of what would happen if she stayed silent. She thought about the chair again, how it had forced her to sit straight, unable to move freely. How she had felt watched, controlled. That chair had not been random, it had been a message. You are small, you do not decide, you stay where you are placed. Tears filled her eyes, but she wiped them away quickly. Crying would not help, she needed to think clearly. The next few days were tense. She noticed subtle changes in how people treated her. Friendly smiles faded. Conversations became shorter. She caught people watching her when they thought she was not looking. One afternoon, her access to a shared folder was suddenly removed. When she asked about it, the response came hours later. Technical issue, will be fixed. It was not fixed. The message was clear. She was being pushed back, boxed in. Then something happened that changed everything. She received another file sent by mistake or carelessness. She was not sure which. This one was different. It contained a summary meant for a small group, written in plain language. No effort had been made to soften it. She read it once. Then again. Her hands went numb. The document clearly described actions that were hidden from public view, decisions that crossed lines, plans to continue no matter the consequences. It even mentioned the risk of exposure and how to handle it. She felt sick. This was the most dangerous truth she had uncovered so far, not just because of what it revealed, but because of what it meant for her. She now had proof, real proof. And proof made her a problem. She closed the file and stared at her reflection in the dark screen. She looked the same, but she felt different. Older, heavier. At that moment, she understood something important. The danger was no longer only about what they were doing. It was about what they might do to keep it hidden. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Are you okay?" She stared at the screen, her heart racing. She did not reply. Instead, she shut down her computer, gathered her things, and left the building without looking back. Outside, the air felt sharp and real. She breathed deeply, trying to calm herself. Cars passed. People walked by, unaware of the storm building inside her. She knew she had reached a point of no return. The truth she had discovered was too big to ignore, too dangerous to handle alone. And for the first time since she had been told to just sit, she understood that staying seated was no longer an option. Something had to change. And whatever came next would test her in ways she could not yet imagine. The next day felt different from the moment she opened her eyes. The room was quiet, but her mind was loud. Thoughts moved fast, running into each other. Every sound outside her window made her tense. A passing car, a door closing somewhere in the building. Even her phone resting on the table seemed heavy with meaning. She did not go to work right away. She sat on the edge of her bed, holding her phone, wondering if she should call in sick or say nothing at all. Both choices felt risky. Staying home might draw attention, going in might be worse. In the end, she went. She dressed carefully, choosing simple clothes that would not stand out. She tied her hair back the same way she always did. She practiced her calm face in the mirror. The one that said everything was normal. On the way there, she kept looking over her shoulder. No one followed her. Nothing unusual happened. Still, the fear did not fade. Inside the building, the air felt heavier than ever. She greeted the guard at the entrance with a polite smile. He nodded back as usual. That small, normal moment almost made her feel foolish for being afraid. Almost. At her desk, her computer took longer than usual to start. The screen stayed dark for a few seconds and her heart raced until it finally lit up. Everything looked the same, her inbox, her calendar, but she knew better now. Normal was only a surface. She worked quietly, saying little. She avoided eye contact when possible. Every time someone walked past her desk, her muscles tightened. She felt watched, even when no one was looking. Around midday, she was called into a meeting she had not been told about. The message came suddenly, with no details, just a room number and a time. Her hands trembled as she stood up. The room was smaller than the one from her first day. No large windows, no heavy chair this time, just a table and 3 people already seated. The man from her first meeting was there. So was the woman from the upper floor. The third person was someone she did not recognize. "Please sit," the man said. Her chest tightened, but she sat. They spoke calmly, almost kindly. They asked how she was settling in, whether she felt supported, whether she had any concerns. The questions sounded friendly, but she felt the weight behind them. "I'm fine," she said carefully, "still learning." "That's good," the woman said, smiling. "Learning takes time." The third person leaned forward slightly. "We value trust here," he said. "It's important that everyone feels comfortable." She nodded, keeping her face still. "Sometimes," the man added, "new people see things they don't fully understand. That can cause unnecessary worry." Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure they could hear it. "If that happens," the woman said softly, "we hope they come to us first." The message was clear. They were not asking questions, they were giving a warning. "I understand," she said. The meeting ended quickly after that. As she left the room, her legs felt weak. She returned to her desk and sat down, her mind racing. They knew. Maybe not everything, but enough to be concerned. Enough to remind her where she stood. That afternoon, her workload changed. Tasks she was used to disappeared. New ones appeared, smaller and more repetitive. Work that kept her busy but taught her nothing. Work that kept her from seeing too much. She realized what they were doing. They were isolating her. Days passed like this. Quiet, controlled, smiles without warmth, polite words with sharp edges. She stopped writing notes at work, afraid someone might see. She memorized what she could and waited until she was home to write it down. At home, she began to notice other changes. A missed call with no message. A car parked across the street for too long. Emails that failed to send, then worked fine an hour later. None of it was clear enough to prove anything. But together, it formed a pattern she could not ignore. She stopped sharing details of her life with anyone. She avoided social media. She kept her curtains closed at night. Fear became a constant companion, quiet but strong. One evening, she received an email that made her hands go cold. It was short and polite, thanking her for her work and reminding her of the importance of discretion. No threat, no accusation, just a reminder. She deleted it, then checked the trash, then deleted it again. Still, the words stayed in her mind. Discretion. She felt trapped between 2 impossible choices. If she spoke, she risked everything. Her job, her safety, her future. If she stayed silent, she would become part of the harm she now understood. She thought about leaving again, running, starting over somewhere else. The idea was tempting, but the truth followed her thoughts wherever she went. Leaving would not erase what she knew. Late one night, she opened her notebook and read everything she had written so far. Page after page of careful notes, connections, questions. It scared her how clear it all looked when laid out like that. She closed the notebook and held it against her chest. "This is real," she whispered. The fear she felt was no longer just fear for herself. It was fear of what would continue if no one stopped it, of how many people would be affected without ever knowing why things had gone wrong for them. The next day at work, she noticed something else. People began avoiding her completely, not just quiet now but distant, as if they had been told to stay away. Even the man who had warned her before would not meet her eyes. She was alone. That loneliness hurt more than she expected, not because she needed their friendship, but because it showed how easily people could turn away when things became uncomfortable. She realized then how powerful silence could be. One afternoon, as she packed up to leave, she found a note on her desk. No name, just a few words written neatly. "Think carefully." Her hands shook as she read it. She looked around, but the office was nearly empty. She folded the note and slipped it into her pocket, her heart racing. That night, she did not sleep. She sat in the dark, listening to the sounds of the building, thinking about the future, about how small choices had led her here, about how being told to just sit had grown into something far larger. She understood now that the cost of knowing the truth was not sudden or dramatic. It came slowly, through pressure, through isolation, through fear. They did not need to threaten her openly. They only needed to remind her of what she stood to lose. As dawn approached, she made a decision. She did not know exactly what she would do yet, but she knew what she would not do. She would not pretend anymore. The truth had changed her, and there was no going back. The danger was real and it was close, but so was her responsibility. She stood up from her chair, stretched her stiff limbs, and looked out the window as the sky began to lighten. Whatever came next would not be easy, but staying silent was no longer an option. The morning she finally acted, the world looked the same, but she did not. She woke before the alarm, calm in a way she had not felt in weeks. The fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her. It sat beside her, quiet and heavy, while something stronger stood up inside her. She made tea and watched the steam rise. Simple things grounded her: the sound of water, the warmth of the cup in her hands. She reminded herself that she was real, that her choices mattered. She packed carefully, nothing unusual, just what she needed for a normal day. Before leaving, she opened her notebook one last time. She read through her notes slowly, not to scare herself, but to be sure. The facts were steady. The patterns were clear. She closed the notebook and placed it in her bag. On the way to work, she did not rush. She walked at her usual pace. She greeted the street vendor with a nod. She breathed in the morning air. If this was the last normal morning for a while, she wanted to remember it. At the building, she passed through security without trouble. The guard smiled. She smiled back. Inside, she went to her desk and turned on her computer. Messages loaded. Meetings filled the calendar. Life continued, unaware of the line she was about to cross. She worked for an hour, completing tasks as expected. Then she stood up and walked to a quiet corner near the stairwell. She took out her phone and typed a message she had prepared the night before. Short, clear, honest. She sent it to an address she had saved days ago but never used. Her hands shook as she pressed send. For a moment, nothing happened. She stood there, listening to the faint echo of voices from another floor. She told herself that courage did not always feel loud. Sometimes it felt like standing still while everything inside wanted to run. She returned to her desk and continued working. Minutes passed, then an hour. Her phone stayed silent. Doubt crept in. Had she done the right thing? Had she sent it to the right place? She pushed the thoughts away and focused on what she could control. Near midday, she received a reply. It was brief, professional. It asked her to confirm a few details and to preserve any information she had. It did not promise safety or success. It did not offer comfort. But it acknowledged her. It told her she was not invisible. Her chest loosened slightly. She followed the instructions carefully. She did not copy files recklessly. She did not take risks she could not explain. She documented what she had already seen and noted where other information could be found. She stayed within the rules, steady and patient. That afternoon, she was called into another meeting. This time, the tone was different. The room was the same, but the air felt tight. The man avoided her eyes. The woman's smile did not appear at all. They spoke in careful phrases, circling around questions without asking them directly. "Is everything all right?" the man asked. "Yes," she said. "I'm doing my job." They exchanged a look. The third person leaned back, folding his hands. "We've noticed you seem distant." She met his gaze. "I've been focused." Silence stretched between them. She felt it pull, testing her. She did not look away. The woman cleared her throat. "We expect loyalty." "I understand," she said. They ended the meeting without another word. As she walked back to her desk, her heart beat fast, but her steps were steady. She knew now that whatever they suspected, they could not be sure, and she would not give herself away. In the days that followed, things moved quickly and slowly at the same time. Outside her view, actions were being taken. Questions were being asked. She was contacted again, always carefully, always with respect. She answered what she could and said clearly when she did not know something. At work, the pressure increased. Her access was restricted further. Her tasks became meaningless. Someone hinted that her position might change soon. She listened without reacting. At home, she prepared for uncertainty. She organized her finances. She packed important papers. She told herself that whatever happened, she would find a way forward. One evening, as she left the building, the man who had warned her before stood near the door. He looked at her for a long moment. "You did it, didn't you?" he asked quietly. She did not answer. He nodded once. "I wish I had." They parted without another word. A week later, the shift became impossible to ignore. People whispered openly now. Meetings were canceled. New faces appeared in the building, asking polite questions and taking careful notes. The man from her first day did not come in. The woman was absent. She was called into a different office, this time with people she had never met. Their voices were calm. Their questions were direct. They thanked her for her honesty and reminded her that the process would take time. When she left the room, her legs trembled, but her head was clear. She returned to her desk and found a message waiting for her, a formal notice. Her role was being paused while matters were reviewed. She was asked to return her access badge at the end of the day. She read it twice, then folded it neatly. Packing her things felt strange, quiet, final. She placed her notebook in her bag and stood up. Some people avoided her eyes. Others watched her with curiosity. No one spoke. At the door, she paused and looked back one last time. The office lights glowed softly. Desks sat in neat rows. It looked harmless. It always had. Outside, the air felt wider. She breathed deeply as if she had been holding her breath for months. The weeks that followed were not easy. There were interviews, long waits, moments of fear when she wondered if she had ruined her life. But there were also moments of relief, of pride, of quiet strength. She found support where she had not expected it. Old friends reached out. New opportunities appeared slowly but surely. She learned that endings could also be beginnings. One afternoon, months later, she sat in a small cafe, sunlight warming her face. Her phone buzzed with a final message confirming that the matter had been addressed. The words were careful, but the meaning was clear. The truth had mattered. She closed her eyes and let the weight lift from her shoulders. The danger had been real. The cost had been high. But she had not stayed seated. She had stood up. As she finished her tea, she thought about that first day. The chair, the laughter, the moment she had been told to sit instead of being heard. She smiled softly. That moment had started everything. It had taught her something she would carry for the rest of her life. When someone tells you to sit down because it is easier for them, it is often because standing up would change everything. She paid the bill, stepped outside, and walked forward into a future she had chosen herself.